Hey everybody, Aaron here. Welcome back to another anime review. Today we look at the final episode of Made in Abyss, at least for the season, which is episode 13, and I will be talking about the whole series as well. Now, this episode was... I think this is an episode that people are going to talk about for a while for the season, because I will say, I think, and I'm going to say something I think a lot of people will agree with me on. This was an incredible episode, and probably one of the better final episodes of any show this season, to be honest with you. The amount of emotional impact it had, the story it told, and the way it left off on this kind of perfect way of having another season possibly follow behind it was just what I wanted from the show, and just what I like from an ending. This is not one of those endings that you feel you need another season right away. This is an ending where you feel like another season will work fine when in due time. You know, it doesn't feel like, oh, look, cliffhanger, let's just end it like that. No, it wasn't like that at all. It really felt like you could start a new adventure from here, and I loved every second of that. Now, let me first talk about the episode before I talk about the whole series. So, we saw, obviously, how Mitty and Nanahashi met, and what they were taken in by was essentially a whistleblower of sorts. You know, I believe he was a white whistle also, but his thing was research. He loved to research things, and he would research everything he could about the Abyss, but he also took in all these children, and it looked like he was taking them to, you know, help them out and just make sure they were doing healthy in the Abyss, etc. But here's where things get very interesting. What he was actually doing this whole time was he was dropping people into the furthest layer of the Abyss and then shooting them right back up as fast as humanly possible via this quick elevator. Now, as we know from last week's episode, which made it even more relevant than before, we learned from Nanahashi that going through the Abyss at a very fast rate can cause this kind of deformation / monstrous creation inside of you, where you could just either die flat out because you're basically, your body's undergoing a massive change, or you can become something else that's not even human anymore. And obviously we have Mitty and Nanahashi getting tormented by that sheer factor when the researcher takes Mitty to use as the first experiment, but Nanahashi follows, and they decide, you know what, I'll throw both of them in the elevator. And they were both in different elevator parts. They both went down into the Abyss, saw the monstrosities that were down there, which were all their other boys and girls that were transformed into various creatures like Mitty. And then when they were shot back up, as we know, Nanahashi was able to survive. She actually just went through this kind of mutation into a rabbit creature. It didn't look as harmful or painful as I thought it might be, but it was quick, and just there she was. She was a human once, and now she's like a rabbit creature after, I should say. But Mitty, meanwhile, was not as lucky. Her body basically went through this painful, I want to say, like, destruction of sorts, where she became like an ooze-like creature that's even worse than what we saw when we see her current form. And, I legit wanted to cry during this whole sequence. Like, that was just... my mouth was wide open. I could not express words of how messed up that scene was, and I think a lot of people will be agreeing with me on Twitter and just in the comments if they saw the episode, how disturbing that whole sequence was. That's how bad that was. But, when they escaped, obviously, because the researcher was a psychopath, he was so happy that, Mitty became what she did, and also Nanahashi survived and became the kind of rabbit creature. They realized they had to go. So, obviously, at one point, they must escape, and they flew out of there, and thus we get back to where we were currently with the show. Now, we saw that Reg had to then kill Mitty, obviously, with his incinerator, and we learned that that's because what happened during her research trying to figure out a way to kill Mitty, because she's been trying this for a long time, was that she learned that nothing can kill Mitty. There was only this one little strange kind of artifact that when the researcher used it against her, it kind of messed her up, and at one point it actually made it so her eye would regenerate. So she realized that maybe destroying her whole body and every little spark of it at the same time would be enough to kill her, because nothing else can work. Nothing. She tried everything, apparently, according to Reg, and Reg realized that Mitty was indeed tormented. So lo and behold, using the incinerator later on at her, and it was like, that whole scene made me want to cry. I kid you not, folks. I legit wanted to bawl my eyes out. It was just, I was so sad watching Mitty and Nanahashi's kind of last talk between them, and then Reg using the incinerator on her was just, that was hard to watch. That really was. But once he passed out, Reg wakes up, and obviously Rico's awake, and from there they all decide, you know what, let's let's journey down further. We have to go further. Rico has not changed her mind with it. And there was a lot of funny scenes in between this. Like, there was the scene where they took a bath together, and she's like, Reg, what happened to your thing down there? It's, because you got an erection probably seeing her, naked. And you got, folks, by the way, for the people that are saying, because they're still teenagers, okay? I mean, that still happens to teenagers. So yes, him reacting that way is completely normal. And I think a lot of people see them as like little kids, and I'm like, you forget they're 14, 13 years old. I mean, they're still teenagers. They're hitting their teen years now, so they're going through the pubescent cycle and various other things in their mind. So it's not that weird. It's weird maybe to see it because it's the way it looks. Because it reminds me of like Higurashi, where you see characters that don't look like adults as kids per se, but it's not as weird as people. I know a lot of people that are really pissing me off with that whole statement about like, oh, they're kids. They're really not kids. They're they're young, yes, but they're not kids. So stop being so weird about it. Like, people read too much into stuff, I swear to God, especially when it comes to anime. Like, just let it be what it is. But what was cool was I love the last scene, which was when they shot the balloon up into the sky, and it had, I guess, some items for their town, etc. And that whole journey that it took, where it went through all the various areas they traveled through and somehow made it to the top, that was cool to watch. I really liked it, because they even met the Ozen and the, I forgot what the little dude that's actually dressed up like a girl. He actually rebuilt it and was able to shoot it back up into the sky because it had stuck at one point onto a tree and got messed up. It was cool. It was like a kind of reminiscent of everything we've gone through so far. And the ending of where they all now journey together, and then also you see the dude that researched on Midi and Nanahashi at the end, realizing that Midi finally was dead. It's like, oh god, he's going to be involved in the next part, isn't he? And I feel like when I read the manga, I'm definitely going to see him in the next part, so I'm like, oh god. Alright, so, to say the least, this episode, since I just spent 7 minutes talking about it, was incredible, yes. I freaking loved it. I really freaking loved it. But let's talk about the whole series now, and at least the season, at least. So, story-wise, Made in Abyss was incredible. I think that it blended horror and fantasy perfect. There was a lot of dark fantasy elements. I love the exploration of it. I love the world it kind of built. I love the concept of the Abyss. I think the Abyss is just terrifying. It's almost like a version of hell, but it has this whimsical nature to it that you almost want to see what's in the Abyss, what lies beyond the hell that you can see from it or hear about it. And the way it was told, because of using, like, I know it's some people might find it really disturbing to use younger people for the story. It works in a way because it keeps you on your edge of your seat, because these are not people that could fight back in terms of like regular fighting. It's Reg and Rico both had their strengths and weaknesses. Reg was obviously a robot, so he can use the incinerator, but at the cost of him passing out for 2 hours. And the fact that Rico is just a regular girl, their survival aspect is harder because they're not super trained for this. This is only something they can only survive by the edge of their teeth all the time. So it comes off as a better story and more impactful story. That's why I will say Made in Abyss' story was fantastic. I loved it. I think it was, really to say honestly, flawless. Animation was gorgeous. The Abyss, the creatures of the Abyss, the setting, everything. I mean, the character model is probably the weaker part, just because of the fact that sometimes they're like, I get the whole fact that they look like little kids, but even that wasn't a big deal to me. So I say the animation was solid nonetheless also. And music, everything from the opening, the closing, to the fact of the various atmospheric tones and stuff like that, perfect also. That's why, enjoyment-wise, I love this show. I think this is probably one of my favorite things to watch on Friday, by far. That's why if I had a review Made in Abyss between A through F, A+. It hands down, I put it on Mal as a 10 out of 10. It deserves that. And I would think that a lot of people who are watching this will probably agree with me, or even give them a 9 out of 10. But for me, it's perfect. I really loved it, and it's probably one of my favorite shows of the season, hands down. Probably really, like, legit my favorite show of the season, I think. Anyways, what did you guys think about this week's episode? What have you thought about the whole show in general? I would love to know in the comments below. Tell me. As always, if you like my reviews, please hit that subscribe button, share the video around, like the video, check out my Patreon for rewards and stuff like that. And I will talk to you guys later. As always, until our paths cross again, everyone, God bless you all. Bye-bye.